Keep coming. Keep coming. Good.
What we've done is we've got positive going to negative, positive going to negative. So that's gonna make our 36 volts.
So if he goes to battery 1, that shows you we're in the 13 volts. We're perfect for that lift mechanism. When we find the plug that matches this, usually they have corresponding numbers, so we know that when we're wiring the Vantage up, that we have the wires in the right sequence. So we'll get a Vantage out of the box and we'll show you how we set it up and get it ready to install it on the back end of this machine. The cool part about all this is probably the last Vantage being sold in Canada or the US. We were able to get our hands on the last group of them. But for all you guys that are gonna buy used ones and keep them going, the wiring will still be the same, whether it's new or old. This is probably the best it's gonna look in its life. Where are you going, bud? Hey, bud, where are you going, bud? He isn't a bunch of help. All right, this thing will come in out of the box with a whole bunch of adjustments that have to be made. We'll make a few of them for him so that when he gets to using it, it'll be a lot easier. Right now it's set up in the forward troll position. With the flip of a button, we'll be able to turn this 180 degrees and he'll be able to go back trolling within a couple of seconds. First, we gotta wire up a plug and get it ready, and then we can deploy this thing and get it set up and ready for the install. So now most of our boats are starting to come with this new Marinco 3-prong plug, which is quite a bit nicer than the old style Marincos. They seem to be a little bit tougher, heavier contact, easier to plug in and unplug, but a lot more solid when we're using big gauge wires like we are in a Vantage situation. And if we look, you're going to look at the back of this plug and you're going to see that there's a contact for negative. It tells you 1 is negative, 2 is positive, and 3 is going to be for our 12 volt lift motor. So pretty easy to get this right. They give you a little Allen key or an Allen wrench to open it up. On each port, they have 2 little Allen studs that will hold the wires in place. They also give you these really cool little aluminum sleeves that hold the wires so that when we crush them with the screw, they'll actually hold and give us awesome contact. And we want as much wire contact as we can get. So we'll move over to here. I'm going to clean these wires up and skin them and get them ready to go. All right, so we've got all those cleaned up. We're going to make sure that the black and the red are the same length, because if they're the same length, we're going to get really good, nice straight wires coming out of the plug. So now I got to grab the lid, or Jay's going to grab the lid for me, because we want to put these wires through before we skin them, because it's easier. They got a little bit of a rubber gasket back here. Also, have a look at your plug and the orientation. There's a little arrow at the top that meets up with the arrow here, so we know that this is going to go in this direction. Let's try and run the wires through correctly so they match up with the contacts in the back. So many times I get people that put the cap on backwards and they've got the wires all twisted up inside to try and get the orientation right, and they never ever get the lid on correctly. So just a couple of seconds, have a quick look. It'll give you an idea of where your wires are going to come out. I'm going to wait with this little one. I'm probably just going to, because this is a rubber gasket at the back, we'll just poke it through where the black wire's coming. So it'll go through quite easily, maybe. So we did that and it came through quite easily. So now we're going to skin these wires. They usually give you a recommendation. They usually give you a guide on here somewhere. I usually want it to be at least that far because we're going to check it. We want it to be crushed in that much. For this heavy gauge wire, I generally don't use a wire stripper. I'll just go around with a utility knife. I don't try and cut all the way to the wires. I just score the plastic and then I pull the wire coating off. And I'll make this one the same. They're going to be about the same length. And again, like I said, I just score it, and then if I break it back and forth, it just pops off. So those two are done, and I can install these right away, and I'll do the yellow wire last. Just make sure you get all of your wires into the little sleeve. We're looking for number 1 because we've got black, so number 1's right here at the top. We're going to press it in and hold it. Make sure you don't pinch the shielding. Make sure that your shielding is back far enough that all we're biting is the sleeve and the wire. And I'll run it in, and it actually crushes that little sleeve quite nicely, and it makes a good contact. And then, as Jag was mentioning, you want it tight. So put in the big arm of the Allen wrench and tighten it up. We've got a nice finish. We don't have any exposed wire. Everything's in nice and clean. Now we're going to do this one. We're going to do this one a little bit. I left this wire just a little bit longer, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to it. Because these plugs are meant for pretty big gauge wire, and this is kind of small, we're going to take and we're going to just double up the end a little bit just to make it tougher to pull out and to give it a little bit more wire for it to squish and grab. So I'm just going to take the end and I'm going to give us a fold over, put the plug on again, and we're going to go in and we're holding it so it's in, shielding is in there, and we're going to tighten. All of them contacted in, and now on this thing we just have to slide this along, and we've got to look for our, let's rotate that in the right direction. We're looking for two arrows to line them up. That'll also make it easier for us to put the screws in. And these screws are pretty cool. They have, they're big long screws, but they have a really different thread design. And they're designed for plastic. So they just go in like just a quarter turn will almost send them right into their in position. You don't have to keep cranking and cranking. They hold fairly tight. Quite a nice system for plastic parts. So in and tight. And you don't have to go crazy with them, just tighten them so they stop. I always tell people when you're doing plastic, 2-finger tight so that you don't get in there and wrench on it. Just use your fingertips, and if once it's bottomed out, it's done. You don't have to go any further than that. And then we've got a back clamp. Nice clamp it in there, the top and bottom. Set of screws to hold it in place. We'll get our wires running nice and straight. Place those in. Tighten it up. Get the other side. And we're good. And I'll take a little bit of tape and I'll cover this up just so it looks nice and straight and clean. And this is interesting tape. This is splicing tape. So it doesn't really have a sticky side. What it does have is it sticks to itself. So if you do a nice straight wrap and pull a little tension on that tape and keep winding it around, it'll actually grip to itself and it'll kind of melt in or bond to itself, and it makes a really nice waterproof seal. There we go. So all we're going to do is adjust this Vantage up and down so that when we lower our leg, we'll have enough clearance so the prop will actually push water instead of pushing against the back of the boat. So the adjustments are these 4 bolts here. I've loosened just one and used one. So I got it so that when the motor's in the total up position, the prop is not hanging below the bottom of the boat. And when I deploy it, like pushing the button down, the prop is going to be fully immersed in water, so we'll get full thrust out of it. So I'm happy with the adjustment I made. Now I'm just going to tighten all 4 of these, and we're pretty much done the install of this Vantage. And we've checked the up and down. We've turned this thing to a back troller, and all we did to turn it into a back troller was I slid this lever forward, lifted this knob up, turned the motor right around, and now we've made it into a forward troller. But we're going to turn it around because most people use a Vantage as a back troller. So there we are, locked in place, ready to go. All parts are ready. It's all nice and neat. Put a couple little zip ties on to straight finish up. And I think we're done, guys. Okay, so I'll let you come behind me here and you can focus on this motor, and I'll deploy it. And you'll watch it deploy itself down. And now we have this prop below the bottom of the boat, so we're going to get forward full thrust. And then when I lift it up, you're going to see that our prop and skeg is out of the water, so we won't have any bad motion when we're going up on plane. Another good tip for when you have zip ties is if you use a flush cut side cutter, which cuts right flat, you don't get those little sticky out barbs that can hook you and cut your fingers. Now they're smooth. So it's a nice little tool that makes that job a lot easier.